Hello everyone. Today I'll be reading the classic Bigfoot Encounters thread. The main story is a nice length, while the rest are rather short. Take a seat by the fire, and let me tell you these tales. Feel free to share your Bigfoot encounters in this thread. I'll be sharing mine. Family owns a cabin in the mountains. Great-grandfather built the original section, and my grandfather, father, and I all added more to the cabin over the decades. Went from a small 2-room cabin to a 2-story, 5-room cabin with a porch. Upstairs is the bedroom with 2 beds. Downstairs is the living room, kitchen, bathroom, and study. Study has an old steel tanker desk my grandfather put there, and bookshelves full of old hunting, fishing, and trapping books and a ton of old sci-fi novels my dad read as a kid. I decided to stay at the cabin over the summer instead of working between college semesters and maintain the property. Neighbors in the area had complained of vandalism, theft, etc., and my dad was worried about someone breaking into the cabin. So I'd live in the cabin for the summer and take care of the property. Dog was an Australian Shepherd named Roscoe. Good dog. Take the 5-hour drive to the cabin. Ah, nature! Yeah, I'll be alone for the whole summer and my only human contact will be when I go into town for gas and food, but I'm cool with that. Spend the rest of the day unloading stuff into the cabin, getting the generator started and the lights turned on, and just generally getting settled in. Nothing unusual happens the first night in the cabin. Spend the next day mowing the grass around the cabin, hacking down weeds and little trees growing along the trails, cleaning out deer blinds, getting rid of wasp nests on the eaves of the cabin, etc. Roscoe keeps freezing and staring off into the woods like he sees something, but then shrugs it off and follows me, panting and wagging his tail. Spend the rest of the day cleaning the solar panels and checking the batteries so I don't need to run the generator for anything except running the AC or TV. Television is an old console-style TV from the 60s. The antenna doesn't pick up on anything but static now since everything is digital, but it has my old NES from when I was a kid hooked up to it. Very nostalgic. No reason to turn it on, basically. So once I've got the solar cells and batteries running, there's no need for the generator anymore. Cook some Wolf brand chili, no beans, because chili doesn't have beans, you heretics, on the gas stove in the kitchen and admire the view out the kitchen window. The motion-triggered lights pick up on a raccoon hanging around behind the cabin, and I watch it while I cook. Eat dinner in the living room while reading a book on African big game. Death in the tall grass, I think. Lights start dimming. Something's wrong with the inverter and the solar cells aren't charging the batteries fully. Call it an early night and head to bed to save the batteries. Spend the next day trying to figure out why the batteries aren't charging, but I'm clueless. Roscoe keeps looking off into the woods and whining. Give up on fixing the battery charger. I'll just run solar by day and generator at night. Head off into the woods to check on the fence line of the property. Have my grandpa's old Smith & Wesson Model 1038 revolver from when he was a cop in the 60s on my hip, just in case of snakes or whatever. Roscoe is acting increasingly nervous, refuses to leave my sight, keeps staring into the woods and whining. Unusual behavior, but whatever. Fence is damaged in a couple places. I make note of where I need to do repairs. I've got all summer, so I'm in no hurry to get it done. Roscoe suddenly starts barking and snarling like something's there, and I turn to look. I don't see anything, but I draw my revolver and call out, "Who's there?" Roscoe charges off into the woods, still barking, and something big goes crashing through the brush, pursued by Roscoe. I call my dog and chase after him, worried he's going to get into a fight with the bear or something. Suddenly hear Roscoe yelp and he runs back to join me, tail tucked between his legs. There's a loud roar, like nothing I've ever heard before, and more crashing in the brush ahead. I still haven't seen whatever the dog was chasing, and I don't want to see it. I run back to the cabin with Roscoe right behind me. Load rifle. It's a Gibbs carbine, basically a sporterized Enfield rifle in .308 with a nickel finish. I only brought it along in case a bear tried to break into the cabin or something, not because I intended to shoot anything. Round in the chamber, magazine fully loaded. Stay in the cabin the rest of the day. Don't see or hear anything unusual. Eventually relax, cook dinner, feed Roscoe, read some more of my book, and head to bed. Revolver under my pillow and rifle leaning against the wall next to the bed, of course. Head out the next day to finish checking the fence line. Take rifle with me this time. Roscoe is increasingly nervous, tail tucked between his legs, shaking, growling while staring off into the woods. He's making me nervous, too. I don't see or hear anything odd. Birds are singing, squirrels are doing their thing. Everything seems normal except the dog. Start checking the area near the creek and that's when things get bizarre. The berry bushes are picked clean, normally have berries this time of year. I start to suspect that we have a bear in the area and that's what we encountered yesterday. There's weird footprints in the mud around the creek, too big and shaped wrong to be a deer or pig, but there's so many prints that the mud is churned up and I can't get a clear look at any of them. Suddenly, something sails through the air and lands on the trail a few feet from me. It's a pine cone. The fuck? Another one flies out of the woods and lands on the trail. Somebody is throwing pine cones at me. I shout, "Who's there?" No response. I inform whoever is in the woods that they are trespassing on private property and that I'm armed. A large stick flies at me and misses. I throw it back and yell that I'm calling the sheriff if they don't leave. They throw a rock at me. Fuck this. I flip off the safety on my rifle and fire a shot into the air. There's dead silence other than the ringing in my ears. Make a show of chambering another round and yell that I'm going to call the sheriff, so they need to leave immediately. There's dead silence again for a long, tense moment, and then there's a hailstorm of rocks, sticks, pine cones, and other shit being thrown at me from the woods. A couple of them hit me, hard enough to hurt, and Roscoe yelps when a rock hits him. I still can't see who's throwing shit. I fire another shot, this time into the woods in the direction that the rocks are coming from instead of in the air. There's a loud roar again. Fuck this shit, I'm out. I run back to the cabin, with whoever is throwing rocks and shit crashing through the brush parallel to the trail, still throwing stuff. Roscoe finally has enough and charges off to the woods, snarling. There's an ear-splitting scream and my dog snarling and barking like he's fighting something. I start to follow Roscoe, chambering another round in my rifle, but then another rock flies through the air and hits me in the head. Knocks me for a loop and there's blood everywhere. I nope off back to the cabin and lock myself inside. Roscoe shows up a few minutes later, covered in mud, blood, and leaves. I check my phone and of course there's no signal. Top off the magazine of my rifle and consider driving into town to call the sheriff. Ah, fuck that. Whatever asshole was throwing rocks should be more than scared of me than vice versa. After all, I have a gun, and Roscoe clearly got in a fight with whoever it was. I've got a nasty bruise on my forehead and a small cut. Clean it up and slap a band-aid on. I'm in siege mode, just in case the asshole returns. Run the generator so I have lights. Keep checking out the windows while I cook dinner. The motion-triggered lights go off a few times, but I never see anything. Eventually decide the trespasser had enough and isn't going to come back. Shut off the Jenny and head to bed. Gun still ready to go, of course. Wake up the next morning, grab my rifle and Roscoe, and go check the property for any signs of the trespasser. Woods are eerily quiet. Roscoe is acting nervous again. I'm thoroughly creeped out and decide to spend the entire day holed up in the cabin. Don't see or hear anything unusual whenever I check outside, but it's still eerily quiet. No birds, no animals moving, nothing. I spend the entire day alternating between reading and nervously looking out the windows. Nightfall. I refuel the generator and start it before it gets too dark outside, then head into the kitchen and start cooking a pot of canned beef stew. Motion-triggered lights keep going off, but don't see anything. Roscoe is whining and acting nervous again. Keep the .38 holstered on my hip and the rifle next to my chair in the living room. After checking the front windows again, I walk back into the kitchen just in time to see something looking through the window at me. I can't tell what it is. I just see eyes and a dark silhouette. I shout and draw my revolver, pointing it at the window, and whatever it is vanishes. Running up to the window, I look outside as the motion lights go off and see a large shadow disappear into the trees. The window is high off the ground. Walking out the back/kitchen door requires going through a short flight of steps. I'm 6 feet tall and wouldn't be able to look into the kitchen window from outside, so whatever was peering in the window was fucking huge. I'm convinced it's a bear. Holster my gun again, stir the stew on the stovetop and turn down the heat so it doesn't burn. Then retrieve the rifle and step out the kitchen door to see if I can see/hear anything. The lights flicker and the generator sputters, coughs, then dies. I'm left in the dark. Shit. Head back into the cabin, hit my shin on the coffee table, and lay my rifle in the chair. Roscoe is whining. I grab an old army angle-head flashlight from the front door and step onto the porch. The generator is in an enclosure to the left of the door. I open it up, double-check the fuel tank, don't see anything obviously wrong, and start the generator up again. Lights come back on. There's the sound of shattering glass, and I run back into the kitchen just in time to see a long, hairy arm reaching through the broken window and grabbing my pot of stew off the stove. I whip out my .38 and empty it at the window. There's an ear-splitting screech and the pot of stew is dropped, making a mess all over the stovetop and kitchen floor. I run to the window in time to see a huge figure vanish into the trees again. Grab rifle from my chair, then run upstairs to the bedroom. Eject empty cases from my revolver and reload it from the box of ammo on the nightstand. Check out the bedroom window. Motion lights are on, but I don't see anything. Head back downstairs and go out the kitchen door. Roscoe is shaking and refuses to follow me. I stand at the very edge of where the motion lights illuminate the tree line, shining my light into the woods and shouting threats. Something rustles in the brush and I catch a glimpse of motion in the beam of my flashlight. Shouldering a rifle, I start to squeeze the trigger and when the lights go out. Wait, the lights didn't go out. I can still see the yard lit up. I turn and there's something huge between me and the lights, creating the dark spot. I somehow avoid tactically shitting myself and fire my rifle at the silhouette. There's a scream and something shaped like a person runs into the woods. I chamber a new round and fire again. A rock comes sailing out of the woods in the direction of where I saw motion. There's fucking 2 of them. I fire a third shot in the direction of the rock thrower, then draw my revolver and empty it into the woods. There's another loud roar and something huge crashing in the brush as another rock sails towards me. I hear more crashing off to the side where the one that got between me and the cabin ran. Fuck this, I'm not getting surrounded. I haul ass into the cabin, double check all the doors and windows are locked, reload both guns, and cover the broken kitchen window with a piece of plywood and hammer it into the wall with some nails. There's a constant thumping sound as at least 2 of the creatures are hurling rocks and sticks at the walls of the cabin. I retreat upstairs with Roscoe, open up the bedroom windows, and fire multiple shots into the woods around the cabin. The rain of rocks and sticks stops. After a while, the motion lights stop going off. I hear a weird noise coming from the woods, like a cross between animal grunts and somebody singing without words. Fire another shot into the woods and the noise stops. I stay up all night, too afraid to sleep. Generator runs out of gas around 3 a.m., and the cabin switches to battery power. Batteries still aren't charging properly, so the lights go out less than an hour later. Dead silence outside. Dawn finally arrives and I jump in the Bronco with Roscoe and haul ass into town. As soon as I reach the gas station on the edge of the small town near the cabin, I pull out my phone and call my dad to tell him what happened. He tells me to stay put and that he's on his way. It's a 5-hour drive, so I've got a bit of a wait. I just sit in the Bronco with Roscoe the entire time, dozing but too high-strung to actually fall asleep. Dad finally pulls into the parking lot next to me, has me tell him the whole story, then calls the sheriff. A deputy shows up and I tell him the whole story. Deputy is obviously skeptical but follows us to the cabin. Show him the rocks and sticks all around the cabin and the scuff marks on the wall where they hit, and the broken window and spilled stew, etc. Deputy also notes all the spent brass where I'd been shooting and decides that something obviously happened and I wasn't making it up. We all 3 hunt around for footprints and other evidence. We find a few, but they're never clear enough to make out. Deputy writes it all down in his notebook and says that 3 other people reported similar incidents in the past month, then leaves. Dad helps me clean up the mess in the kitchen, refuel the generator, and fixes the inverter so the solar cells charge the batteries properly. Then I throw all my shit into the Bronco, because fuck staying here all summer. Don't return to the cabin until hunting season in the following winter, and only with my dad and uncle with me. Never see or hear anything unusual again. That's the end of my Bigfoot story. Now for my dad's story, which is why he immediately believed me when I told him what happened. Late 1970s. My dad, uncle, and grandpa are hunting at the cabin. They're all in separate deer blinds. Dad isn't legally old enough to drink, but he has a small cooler full of beer in the tree blind with him anyway. Rifle is hanging from its sling on a tree branch. He has no serious intention of shooting a deer and is mostly there to drink. Something big starts rustling in the brush and he sits up, thinking it might be a pig since deer aren't that noisy. Fucking Bigfoot steps out into the clearing. He says he remembered it had reddish tan hair all over, but it looked more like a man than an ape. It looks around the clearing casually, then spots him sitting up in the tree and stares at him. He says he wasn't scared of it because it didn't seem threatening, just curious. So he stared back and wished he had a camera with him so he could prove it was real. It walks over to the tree he's in and reaches up. He's 10 feet off the ground and its fingertips are brushing the bottom of his blind. Suddenly he's nervous about this huge thing and shouts at it to go away. It jumps up and grabs onto the deer blind, its weight making the whole blind creak, and my dad's afraid it's going to break off the tree and take him with it. He pours his beer onto Bigfoot's head. It lets go and wipes its head, licking the beer on its hands and looking puzzled. My dad grabs a full can of beer from the ice chest and beats him over the head with it to make it go away. Suddenly, Bigfoot isn't amused anymore and roars so loud his ears hurt and begins jumping up and grabbing at the tree blind. Dad fumbles to grab the rifle and fires, completely missing the creature. This is enough to scare it off though, and it runs into the woods. Uncle and Grandpa show up, wondering what's going on. Dad yells for them to grab their shit and get the fuck out. Leaves the rest of the beer in the blind and they all head back to the cabin, where he tells them what happened. If they hadn't heard the roar before the gunshot, they wouldn't have believed him. They go back to the tree blind to look for evidence, find that the blind has been ripped off the tree and the cooler broken apart. Smashed beer cans oozing beer everywhere. They pack up the truck and nope back home. Never see any signs of the thing until 30 years later when I have my encounter. So, anybody got their own stories to tell? Has anyone been touched by a Sasquatch? Be me. Camping Mount Baker, Washington. Set up tent site in sick spot by a valley lake. 3 a.m. Hear large organism washing itself in the still water. Less than 20 feet from my tent. Hold my big knife, all I had, to my chest and nervously await potential death from Sasquatch or bear. Thundering, slappy steps through the branches and soft earth by the water walks up to the trail towards my sight. Hear heavy, primal, deep, guttural animal breathing. Definitely not human, maybe bear or Sasquatch. Past my tent. Stay awake the rest of the night, and leave as soon as it's daylight. The mountain has haunted old gold mine shafts too. Also heard a woman scream after gunshots late at night the night prior. Solo camping in northeast Iowa near Mississippian area with Bigfoot sightings. Eat mushrooms. Hike to top of ridge to watch sunset. Excellent. Realize it's getting dark, so I should get back to start a campfire to keep me warm and also to stare at, be entranced by. Descend from limestone bluff, and at the bottom, all the hairs on my arm and neck go up, and my fight or flight response goes off in an incredibly intense way. I am being hunted. I figure it's probably a mountain lion because there are lots of those in the area. I begin to move through the tall grass back to the trail. Hear something moving behind me. Slow, long steps. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh through the grass. Fuck this. Run back the whole way to the campsite feeling like I'm getting chased. No way that was a mountain lion, it was huge. Now it's dark. I make a fire and start to relax. I'm camped by a small lake maybe 50 feet across. I hear footsteps through the leaves on the other side of the lake. A huge rock is thrown in the lake. Kaploosh. A piercing, inhuman shriek sounding like a rabbit getting killed, but worse. I'm tripping balls so I can't drive. Am I about to get killed by a monkey man? I remember that Native Americans and Tibetans said that only whiskey will placate the Squatch. I pour a tin cup full of cheap brandy and set it out on the trail 100 feet from my campsite. Rest of the night is calm, but I'm still a little shaken up. In the morning the cup is empty, tipped over. There was no wind that night. So, maybe I had a Bigfoot encounter. Maybe I was just tripping. Either way. Oh, there are also lots of reports from that area of Bigfoot being sighted crossing gravel roads and walking near fence lines or property lines by old farmers who are not the type to go telling stories. Up, you've either studied the subject in depth and crafted a very good story using reliable information, or it actually happened. Here's mine. Colorado, springtime. Drinking a tall boy and hiking up a mountain at dusk. Mountain is surrounded by suburbs, but still at the edge of the greater Rockies. Lots of mule deer up here, coyotes, mountain lions, even elk. Get to top of plateau. Walk 1/4 mile to nearest high tension tower. Drunk, feeling tough, decide to stand on cement pylon and piss on it. Sun is now down. Feel a bit exposed, and think if predators are around I'm offering a challenge. Don't care, have my 4000 lumen flashlight and BK9. Get off the pylon and start walking back. Flash blizzard, within 2 minutes it's a whiteout. No big deal, know the trail well. Flip on my light to 2K lumen mode. Can't see shit further than 5 feet. Walking between 2 cliff walls. Suddenly great horned owl hoots to my right. That's weird, bad weather and no perches over there. Keep walking. Owl hoots on my left. No perches over there either. Now on my right again. Now on my left. Oh fuck no, .jpg. I'm being corralled towards a big wide trail. Flip off my light and sneak a detour to the narrow cliff face trail. Harder terrain in the snow, but nothing can sneak up on me. 2 more hoots from left and right. They stop and I quietly take the long, difficult way home where I might slip and get fucked up, but can't be ambushed. I'm gonna say this was a hobo, but hey, what do I know? Freaked me the fuck out at the time. B19, live in small logging town in Pacific Northwest. Tight with 2 other friends, guy and girl. Nothing to do here at night. Closest town is about an hour and a half away. So we just drive around the dark, deserted roads. Usually we will find somewhere to pull over, get out of the car and talk, dance, shout into the night. 2 a.m. we are lying on the road. Side of road off the highway. 10 miles from any homes, it's only trees. Totally safe, straight stretch of road, and there probably won't be another vehicle for a couple hours anyway. Lying side by side staring at the stars. Passing joint around. Laughing like goobers. Hear crack of twig. Just an animal, but still makes me uneasy and I shh the others. They're still laughing, but I can definitely hear what sounds like something walking in the trees. Get anxious and tell them to both shut the fuck up. Yeah, that's footsteps. Female friend calls out, "Who's there?" I whisper to her to shut up. Footsteps stop. No reply. Don't know why, but I sense danger. My spine goes cold. Eyes are watering. Total fear. Guys, let's get in the car. All pile in. I lock the doors and turn on ignition. Surreal. It's like a movie, lol. Feel what I can only describe as icy white fear. Just as we start to move, there's a massive crack at the back of the vehicle. All of us yell and scream. A rock hits the trunk. Scream some more, holy fuck! I floor it. Friend in the back yells that he can see something. He said there was a guy/bear type thing walked out of the trees and onto the road. Said he couldn't make anything out because he's only going by moonlight and rear lights. At least 7 foot tall and built like a truck. Again, I tell myself probably an old hermit kinda guy. Also, this happened 20 years ago and maybe my recollection has gone a bit wrong in some parts. But yeah, it couldn't have been that other thing. Who knows? We never stopped down that road again. I know this is late, but that is a beautiful rifle. You have a very good taste in firearms. This is one of my favorites. Operates basically the same as an Enfield. I have a short, second-hand Bigfoot story. Not that great. Be my 2 buddies. Be driving around at 1 AM. Slow down for some train tracks. Bigfoot walks across the road. Get the fuck out and don't even talk about it for a month or so. One buddy won't even say the word Bigfoot or Sasquatch. He's very quiet and all he'll say about it is, "It was fucked." The other I haven't seen in years. This was about 10 plus years ago for reference, by the way. Not me, but my grandfather, a man of very simple means, opened up to my father about wood apes he had seen on a property of his in McCreary County, Kentucky, a notable shithole. According to my grandfather, the wood apes he saw personally all had a similar look. Rangy, a brownish-red coloration, and a gaunt-looking square-shaped face. He said that it was possible that, because he never kept a dog or any other animals and his property was far away from any of the local mines, that it had traffic from many animals, and at the time he didn't pay any real heed to them. My grandfather spent quite a bit of his time in nature and was unaggressive to a fault, and even brought a salt lick station on his property so that he could see deer on his property nearly nightly. He said that he had seen them perhaps 3 times at the edges of his property near the tree line, before they ventured out of sight. But he had heard quiet grunting and other sounds at night that were distinct against, say, deer. He was adamant that he also never saw a bear sign on his property despite living there for years. And he, in fact, supposed that it was the presence of the wood apes that they didn't venture into the clearing where his house was in. Hello again, everyone. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like the video if you enjoyed these stories, and subscribe to hear more in the future. Click the bell icon in order to be alerted when I have more stories to tell, and until then, don't go to the Bigfoot cabin.